When did your boss realize some shifts simply can't be covered? It all started back in February. I'd given Wendy, my manager, 3 weeks' notice about my mom's funeral. 3 weeks. I submitted the bereavement paperwork the day my mother died. I even circled the date in bright red on the calendar in her office. She looked me in the eye, said she was sorry for my loss, approved the time off, and then she scheduled me anyway, for the exact hours of the service. My jaw dropped when I saw the schedule. I went straight to her office, schedule in hand, pointing out the obvious mistake. But Wendy just stared at it, then at me. "It's not a mistake," she said, her voice completely flat. "We're short-staffed that day. I need all hands on deck." I stood there, stunned. I reminded her again. "My mother's funeral is that day." Her response? A cold shrug. "You can attend the viewing the night before. Funerals are for the living anyway. Your mother won't know if you miss it." My blood ran cold. She actually said that. She then launched into a lecture about how work commitments came first and that I'd have plenty of time to grieve after my shift. And then the kicker. If you really cared about your job, you'd understand that the restaurant needs you more than a dead person does. I couldn't believe my ears. "I am absolutely not coming in during my mother's funeral," I told her, trying to keep my voice steady. That's when she threatened to write me up for insubordination. She called me selfish. Said I was putting my personal life above the team. Personal life. Like my mom's funeral was some kind of concert I wanted to go to. She said, "Everyone has problems, but professionals don't let that affect their availability." When my hamster died, I still came to work the same day. That's what responsible adults do. I was so angry I almost saw red. "Comparing my mother to your hamster is disgusting." I spat out. "Death is death," she countered, completely unbothered. "You're being too emotional. You need to toughen up if you want to succeed in this industry." She then added that she'd already promised a big party reservation that I'd be working because I was the best server and she couldn't disappoint customers just because I was sad. The day of the funeral, I was burying my mother, obviously. Wendy, however, spent the entire service harassing me. My phone buzzed and rang 15 times. Voicemails stacked up, each one accusing me of letting everyone down and threatening write-ups. She texted me, saying I needed to come in immediately after the burial because the dinner rush was starting. She actually wrote, "Since the funeral part is over, there's no reason you can't work the rest of your shift. I'll even let you keep your funeral clothes on if you don't have time to change." I didn't respond. A few minutes later, another text. "You're fired for no call, no show, and abandoning your shift. And then, come collect your final paycheck, minus the cost of having to call in another server at overtime rates." She actually deducted money from my last check to cover the time and a half she had to pay someone else for the shift she'd illegally scheduled me for. The final voicemail was chilling. "You'll never work in this town again. I'll tell every restaurant owner what an unreliable employee you are." That was the moment. That was when I decided Wendy needed to understand what real loss felt like. First, I went straight to corporate. We were a chain restaurant, and her behavior was beyond unacceptable. I forwarded every single one of her texts and voicemails from my mother's funeral. I included the approved bereavement paperwork and the schedule proving she'd scheduled me anyway. And yes, I made sure to mention her comparison of my mother to her hamster and the illegal deduction from my paycheck. Corporate was horrified. An investigation launched immediately. Next, I started reaching out. Every current and former employee I knew. Had Wendy done this to anyone else? The answer was a resounding, sickening yes. One server had missed his father's surgery. Another had been scheduled during her brother's wedding, which she'd requested off 6 months prior. 3 people had been fired for not showing up during approved vacation time. We all filed complaints with corporate on the same day. I also contacted the labor board about the wage theft. Deducting money from my check for refusing to work during approved bereavement leave? That's just plain illegal. They were very interested. They opened an investigation into all of Wendy's payroll decisions and found numerous violations, docking pay for sick days, even for breaks. But then, the universe delivered its own brand of karma. The following month, Wendy's own mother had a heart attack. My friend Aisha's text came through at 7:43 p.m. on a Thursday, the exact same night Wendy had scheduled me through my mother's funeral. My phone lit up while I was heating leftover pasta. You won't believe what just happened. Wendy's mom had a heart attack during dinner rush. She literally dropped everything and ran out the door without even telling anyone she was leaving. Just grabbed her purse and bolted. Tables are sitting with half their orders and nobody knows what's happening. I set my fork down, reading the message 3 times. Aisha sent another one 2 minutes later. She left her keys in the office, jacket on her chair. One of the cooks saw her crying in the parking lot before she drove away. The assistant manager had to come in on his day off to cover. It's chaos here. I saved both messages. A small part of me felt bad for her mother, of course, but a bigger part couldn't ignore the irony. Wendy had written up servers for leaving during emergencies way less serious than a heart attack. She'd fired someone for leaving mid-shift when their kid fell and broke an arm. The next morning, my phone rang. It was Kira Ingram, the HR investigator. She asked if I had a few minutes. I sat up in bed. She explained that Wendy had called corporate from the hospital at 6:30 that morning, requesting immediate emergency bereavement leave, even though her mother was still alive, but in critical condition. Kira's voice remained neutral, but I could hear the unspoken question when she asked if I wanted this added to my complaint as evidence of Wendy's pattern of hypocrisy. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. Wendy was asking for the exact type of leave she denied me, for the exact type of emergency she'd told other employees wasn't important enough to miss work. I took a breath. I hadn't expected to say this, but I did. I don't want to interfere with Wendy getting time off for a genuine emergency. Whatever she's done to me, her mother is in the hospital, and that's serious. Kira made a small sound, maybe surprise. She said she appreciated my perspective, but explained that corporate was denying Wendy's request anyway. She was under active investigation. Standard policy meant no leave during disciplinary proceedings. Kira added that the investigation had expanded beyond just my complaint. They'd found documentation of at least 7 other similar incidents. The company was taking it very seriously now. I agreed to a phone interview the following week. 2 days later, a Saturday morning, a knock on my door startled me. It was 10:30, and I wasn't expecting anyone. I looked through the peephole. It was Wendy. Her mascara was smeared. Her hair looked like she'd been pulling at it. She knocked again, harder. I grabbed my phone, opened the voice recorder, and then opened the door, but I kept the chain on. Wendy started talking immediately. "I need your help," she pleaded. Her mother was still in ICU, and corporate wouldn't approve her leave. She knew it was because of my complaint. "If you just call them and drop the complaint, they'll let me have the time off." Her voice got louder when I didn't respond. And then she said it. The words that still echo in my mind. "My mother is more important than yours had been, because hers might still survive. Your mother was already dead, so it didn't matter if you missed the funeral, but my mother might make it if I could just be there at the hospital." A cold, heavy dread settled in my chest. I closed the door without a word, locking both locks. I sat on my couch and played back the recording. Her voice came through clearly, saying her mother was more important than mine. I attached the audio file to an email and sent it to Kira with a brief explanation. She responded within 20 minutes, even though it was a Saturday. "This constitutes witness intimidation and harassment," she wrote. "Serious violations." She asked if Wendy had left, if I felt unsafe. I told her I was fine. Wendy had left. She said corporate security might reach out. "The audio will be very useful," she added. That Tuesday, Greg Nolan, the regional manager, called. His voice sounded tired. He was calling to inform me personally. Wendy had been terminated that morning for abandoning her shift 3 days after her mother's heart attack. The exact same reason she'd used to fire me during my mother's funeral. He apologized for what I'd been through, acknowledging that the company should have caught these problems sooner. He asked if I'd be willing to come into the office to discuss next steps. "Yes," I said. "Yes." A different kind of call came Wednesday night. A woman's voice I vaguely recognized. Miranda Powell. She'd worked at the restaurant 8 months ago before quitting. She'd heard about Wendy getting fired through the server group chat. She wanted to know if I was planning a class action lawsuit for the wages Wendy had illegally withheld from multiple employees. She had her own story. Wendy had scheduled her during her father's surgery, then Dr. Pei, and wrote her up when she didn't show. She knew at least 3 other people with similar experiences. "Do you have a lawyer yet?" she asked. I told Miranda about the labor board, about Desh Chopra, the investigator. He was very interested in documenting all of Wendy's illegal pay deductions. I offered to connect them. She said that would be perfect and asked for his information. Minutes later, she texted back. She'd already emailed him. "I've been waiting for someone to finally do something about Wendy's behavior," she wrote. "Would you be part of a group complaint?" "Yes," I said. "Yes." 20 minutes later, Desh called. He interviewed 6 former employees over the next 2 weeks, including me. He had my original complaint, pay stubs, all of Wendy's texts. He asked about money deducted, reasons given if I'd signed anything. "Never signed anything," I told him. "She just took it, said it was for overtime." Desh made notes. He said he'd be requesting the restaurant's full payroll records. 3 weeks after my initial complaint, Desh called me with an update that made my hands shake. Wendy had been deducting money from employee paychecks for 2 years. But the money never went back to the restaurant's accounts. She'd been pocketing it herself. Over $15,000 stolen from 9 different employees. This wasn't just a policy violation. It was criminal theft and embezzlement. Desh was referring the case to the district attorney's office. "Would you be willing to testify?" he asked. "Yes," I said, without hesitation. The following Monday, Greg Nolan called again. Corporate wanted to offer me my job back, with back pay for all the shifts I'd missed. They were also offering additional damages for the wages Wendy illegally deducted and compensation for emotional distress. He said they were implementing new oversight procedures to prevent this from ever happening again. Every bereavement leave request would now be reviewed by both the local manager and a corporate HR representative. No manager could schedule someone during approved leave without documented approval from regional management. He asked if I'd consider coming back. The idea of walking back into that specific building made my stomach hurt. He understood. He offered to transfer me to any other location in the region, gave me 3 options, all within 20 minutes of my apartment. I told him I'd think about it. I called him back on Thursday. I'd accept the offer with a transfer. I picked the Riverside location, highest customer reviews, closest to me. The manager there, Hazel, had been with the company for 12 years with 0 complaints. That alone made me feel better. Greg sent the transfer documents, and I signed them within the hour. 2 days later, Liam texted me. He'd also gotten an offer from Greg, his old position back, plus compensation for lost wages. Wendy had fired him for taking an approved vacation to visit his sick grandmother. Liam had a better job now, but he was accepting the settlement check and using it to file a formal complaint with the State Labor Commission. He wanted an official record of what Wendy had done so she couldn't do it to anyone else. Smart, I told him. The labor board moved fast. 3 weeks after Desh interviewed us, a certified letter arrived. Violations against the restaurant corporation for inadequate manager oversight and systematic wage theft. Fines totaled $47,000. Mandatory management training. Quarterly audits. I took a photo and sent it to Miranda, Liam, and Aisha. "This was it," Miranda responded. "Real consequences." Aisha texted me a few days later with news about Wendy. Her mother had survived the heart attack, but needed extended cardiac rehab. Wendy was drowning in medical bills because she'd lost her health insurance when corporate fired her. The irony. I couldn't afford grief counseling after my mom because Wendy had fired me and I lost my insurance. Now she was dealing with the exact same situation she'd created for me. Wendy had been calling the restaurant, begging for her job back, claiming she'd learned her lesson. Corporate said absolutely not. Too many violations. In early April, Desh called with another update that made my hands shake. The district attorney was prosecuting Wendy for theft and embezzlement, based on his referral and all our evidence. Over $15,000 in stolen wages. Enough for criminal charges. He asked if I'd give a deposition describing what happened with my final paycheck. Yes, I said. Immediately. At the DA's office, an assistant district attorney named Jennifer asked me detailed questions for over an hour. I explained everything. Jennifer made careful notes. "Your testimony is important," she said. "It shows a clear pattern of wage theft." She thanked me. The criminal case would probably go to trial within 6 months. Miranda texted our group chat. "Coffee to talk about the class action lawsuit? Now that criminal charges were filed, should we move forward with the civil case?" We met at a coffee shop near the old restaurant. Miranda had done her research, Liam too. Aisha was worried about cost, but Miranda explained about contingency lawyers. We decided to wait and see how the criminal case played out. A conviction would make our civil case much stronger. Official proof. I started at the Riverside location the first Monday in May. The difference was night and day. Hazel, the manager, met me at the door and actually shook my hand. She said Greg had told her about my experience, and that kind of behavior would never be tolerated here. During orientation, she emphasized that approved time off was sacred. If I ever needed to adjust my schedule, personal or professional, I should come to her directly. She'd make it work. On my third day, I mentioned taking flowers to my mother's grave that weekend. Hazel asked how long ago I'd lost her. When I told her 3 months, she got quiet, then told me to let her know if I ever needed time off for grief counseling or therapy. "Grief doesn't follow a schedule," she said. "The company should accommodate that." I almost cried right there. This was how management was supposed to treat employees. Like human beings. Late May, Greg sent me an email. He wanted my input on new corporate policies. He'd attached a draft of updated bereavement leave guidelines. 5 paid days off for immediate family deaths, no scheduling conflicts allowed. Managers couldn't schedule someone during approved leave, period. If they tried, it was automatic grounds for termination. It also included provisions for extended leave and required managers to check in with employees when they returned. He asked if I thought it would adequately protect employees. I read it twice. I suggested adding language about protecting employees from retaliation and requiring managers to document acknowledgement of time off requests in writing. Greg responded within an hour, saying they were excellent additions. Knowing my nightmare had resulted in real policy changes that would protect other people made something in my chest feel lighter. The criminal case moved faster than expected. In July, Wendy pleaded guilty to theft charges. Probation instead of jail time. But she had to pay full restitution to all 9 employees she'd stolen from, plus interest. 200 hours of community service. 3 years probation. Violate any terms, and she'd serve 18 months in jail. Jennifer from the DA's office called to tell me. I told her I didn't want Wendy to go to jail. I just wanted acknowledgement that what she'd done was wrong and my money back. Jennifer said the restitution payments would be handled through the court. I should receive a check within 60 days. The restitution check arrived in my mailbox in late August. I opened the envelope, standing in my kitchen. $843. The exact amount Wendy had deducted, plus interest. I sat down at my kitchen table, holding the check in both hands. It didn't bring my mother back. It didn't erase the trauma. But it felt like official acknowledgement. The court system had looked at the evidence and decided Wendy had committed a crime against me. That validation mattered more than the money. I took a photo and sent it to Miranda, Liam, and Aisha. "We'd won." Miranda texted back immediately, and a champagne emoji. Liam had already spent his on a down payment for a used car. Aisha was framing hers. I deposited the check the next morning. Part of it went to flowers for my mother's grave. The rest went into savings because I'd learned the hard way that financial security mattered. 2 weeks later, a man in a gray suit walked into my new restaurant during lunch. He was the actual owner. He spotted me refilling water glasses and waited until I finished. Then he approached. We went to the manager's office. He closed the door. He'd driven 2 hours, he said, to thank me personally for filing the complaint against Wendy. My documentation had exposed systematic issues with how managers were trained and how little oversight existed. My complaint had triggered a complete review across all 43 locations in the region. They'd found violations at 6 other restaurants. "You've probably saved dozens of employees," he said. Then he offered me a promotion, shift supervisor at my current location with a $4 an hour raise. He said I'd shown real leadership by advocating for employee rights, even when it cost me personally. He wanted people like me in management because I understood what it felt like to be powerless and mistreated. A promotion. After everything. He must have seen the doubt on my face because he added, "This isn't charity or guilt. The company needs supervisors who will actually protect their teams instead of exploiting them." I accepted on the spot. My new responsibilities included creating schedules, handling employee concerns, making sure everyone knew their rights. The first time a server came to me, worried about requesting time off for a family wedding, I pulled out the policy handbook. I showed her exactly what she was entitled to. I made sure she understood that requesting time off wasn't a favor, it was a right. I approved her request immediately, in writing. Over the next few weeks, 3 other servers approached me. One needed therapy appointments after a car accident. Another wanted to adjust her availability because childcare had changed. The third asked about taking a week off to visit his sick grandmother. I approved all of them. In writing. The difference between my management style and Wendy's became obvious pretty quickly. Servers started coming to work on time, staying through their full shifts. They weren't anxious anymore. Turnover dropped significantly. People stopped calling out sick because they trusted that if they asked for time off legitimately, they'd get it. 3 months after everything started, I finally started sleeping through the night again. The nightmares faded. The constant anxiety that had lived in my chest since February began to ease. I wasn't just surviving my grief anymore. I had purpose. Mentoring newer servers, protecting them from the abuse I'd experienced. It didn't fix the grief. It didn't make losing her hurt any less. But it helped knowing that her death, and the nightmare that followed, had resulted in real changes that protected other people. On the 6-month anniversary of my mother's death, I visited her grave. I brought fresh flowers. I sat on the grass. I told her about the policy changes, how Wendy was fired and prosecuted, about my promotion, and how I was using it to make sure other servers knew their rights. I described the new bereavement leave policy and how Greg had asked for my input. I told her that her death and Wendy's cruelty had ended up protecting dozens of employees across the region. It felt important to say all of this out loud, even though she couldn't hear me. The grief still hit in waves. Sometimes I'd see something she'd find funny and reach for my phone. Other times I'd drive past places we used to go and have to pull over. But sitting there, telling her about the changes that came from speaking up, made the pain feel slightly less pointless. Something good had come from the worst experience of my life. I'm enrolling in community college next semester to study human resources. Working with Kira showed me what proper HR work looked like. I want to help create workplaces where people are treated with basic dignity and respect, where managers can't compare someone's mother dying to a hamster, where employees don't have to choose between their job and a family funeral. My mom spent 30 years in retail and food service. She dealt with bad managers and wage theft more times than I can count. She would be proud that I'm turning my pain into something useful instead of just letting it consume me. I'm finally ready to build a future that honors her memory through action. The application deadline is in 3 weeks, and I've already requested the time off to visit campus. In writing. And I got written approval within 24 hours. Because that's how it's supposed to work. So, tell me, what would you have done in my place? Have you ever had a boss who treated your personal life like it was nothing? Let me know in the comments below. I really want to hear your stories.